I hope we had a great KubeCon, our first ever KubeCon in India, and we are almost wrapping up our KubeCon. So we will be presenting, ensuring reliability of our operators and testing them using Envtest. And I'm Aniruddha. I came from Germany, and I maintain Cluster API. And as a part of my work, I also maintain Cluster API headsnap provider. And on my free time, I contribute to many Kubernetes projects, and almost like I contributed 5 providers. And I also did my Linux Foundation mentorship on Cluster API GCP. So any of you ever had contributed more than that, so just reach out to me.
Yeah, my name is Rayan Das. I work as a senior platform engineer at OneTrust. Apart from my day job, I contribute to Kubernetes, currently focusing on SIG release properly. And I have been contributing to the release team since 1.29. I love to travel, so and I work remotely. So every other month, I do workations from every part of India. Yeah, this is our agenda today. I'll be talking about operators and some examples, types of tests, and some drawbacks of traditional testing. And Aniruddha will take you through what Envtest is and testing your controller using Envtest. And we will conclude our talk. So how many of you are writing operators in your day-to-day job? Can you please raise your hands? All right. Yeah. So let's start with some basics. So it's a way to create, manage, and configure complex applications in Kubernetes. So suppose if you want to create a Kubernetes cluster, some of the steps involved are creating infrastructure, bootstrapping, K-test using, suppose KDM, and also manage versions, version upgrades. So operators codifies everything for you. And the native way to do this in Kubernetes is via declarative APIs or CRDs, as you all might know it. Using a CRD, you can specify infrastructure, bootstrap, and versions, etc. And yeah, so these CRDs are then monitored and reconciled by one or more controllers. So what is a controller? A controller is nothing but a control loop that watches for the desired state of the cluster through the API server and makes changes to move the current state to the desired state. Control loop. So now let's talk about control loop. So it's a core principle of Kubernetes. It watches for changes in the custom resources that you are interested in. If there are any differences, you need to take action to reconcile the current state to desired state. So this works in an infinite loop. So it watches for new changes, diff between desired and actual state, and act to remediate the differences and repeat. So this is our mantra. There are a couple of example operators, external secret operator and KRO. KRO is a kube resource orchestrator. So external secret operator is basically, it reads information from a third-party service like AWS Secrets. AWS Secret Manager, and automatically injects the values in Kubernetes secrets. And KRO is basically used to simplify the creation and management of complex custom resources for your for Kubernetes. You can scan the QR codes and it will take you to the GitHub projects, and you can go through it basically. These are some examples. Now, types of tests. So this is a test pyramid. It's in software testing strategy, there are different types of tests. This is the E2E integration and unit tests. These are some basic testing methodologies. So E2E test is more expensive and a bit slower, you can say. And unit tests in comparison is more faster and a bit cheaper. We will go through all these tests and talk about the drawbacks of these tests. So let's talk about unit tests. It's the smallest piece of code that can be logically tested in a software. There are some pros and cons. So unit tests are very fast to write. It's cost effective, and it needs less expertise to write these tests. And the cons. So it does not cover multiple components. It does not check the underlying infrastructure. Code structures, external dependencies can make it difficult. Integration tests. So it helps us test how the application will behave when integrated with other components of the application. So the pros are it catches all the errors when several modules are working together. It broadens the coverage of tests. And the cons are identifying and testing every connection between the module is not easy. So it often relies on mocks or fakes, which may not fully replicate the behavior of real components, leading to potential gaps in test coverage. E2E tests. Yeah. So E2E tests examine the application from the perspective of an end user. The pros of E2E tests: it can validate the business logic of an application. It verifies applications' dependencies if they are working correctly together, including third-party code. It helps finding defects after deployment to production. And some cons: it takes a lot of time to run. Sometimes, more than 2 hours. And it requires significant maintenance. And if there are some issues, then it takes more time to resolve them. Most of us hate to write E2E tests, right? So now coming to the drawbacks of traditional testing approach. So E2E tests are crucial for validating the operators in real-world scenarios. But they come at a cost, right? Which is execution time. Setting up a real Kubernetes cluster Kubernetes cluster and running all the E2E tests are often. It takes a lot of time. And another challenge is the absence of real Kubernetes components. If your operator manages resources like service type load balancer, a fake environment won't simulate the assignment of an external IP. This gap can lead to undetected issues when deploying in production. Lastly, fake Kubernetes clients are widely used in our current E2E tests. Unit tests, but it has its own limitations as well. They don't mutate resources the way a real cluster does. So for example, fields like UUID and resource versions are not automatically set, which can cause discrepancies. Now, Aniruddha will take you through Envtest, what it is, and how you can write your own test to test operators. Over to you.
Yeah, in my current organization, I used to write a lot of E2E test. And if I make some mistakes, I had to wait almost 3 hours until I have the next one. And it used to bother me a lot. So I was trying to find solutions. And we found out that env tests are not extremely time consuming like E2E test, but it comes with a faster time of unit test. Also comes with a lot of Kubernetes control plane integrations in it. And basically, in core, Envtest is you have a very lightweight kube API server, and your etcd instance for the state management without any kubelet controller like manager, all those jargons. So let's look into some operator code and let's try to test it. So as Rayan said, what is the reconcile? What does operator do? It kind of reconciles the state of your custom resource. So here is a reconcile function, typical operator code that this code runs over loop and it tries to match the desired state. So it's an extremely complex operator. So I hope you can follow. So what it does is checks for the resource being created. And after it checks is like if the resource is created, it's going to trigger the next reconcile thing, which is like creating a secret of key and value and then create the secret. And what we should do is we should check if the creation of secret is done or not. So in unit test, what you do is like it don't have any Kubernetes cluster, so it doesn't. You don't know anything about what is happening in a Kubernetes environment, and writing a E2E test is not even like makes sense, I believe. So let's look into how you can test. So it's a testing in the, all of you might be familiar with Go. So in the left, you have all the imports. We usually use Ginkgo and Go Omega for the testing. And also is a test setup on the left. And on the right, you might be familiar with before suits and after suits, which is like a Ginkgo thing. And before suits runs before every test suits run. And what it does is it creates the environment, install all the CRDs into the Kube API server. And what after suit does is it tears down the environment after the test is done. So with describe, we kind of test the controller. And at the beginning, we create our resource and it triggers our reconcile. So our reconcile should be creating the secret. So the next thing we should do is check for the secret is being created. I will go through each of these steps, why I wrote the code like this, and the next, and I will also discuss the best practices. And suppose the secret is created, we got a success. We should also check if the secret value is there or not. The key value should be present. So we do it in this step. And so with this test, you can see that the Kube interacts with Kube API server. And I hope this was not very complex. And let's talk about best practices, what you should be aware of while writing the Kube Envtest. Yes, so as I said, our Kube APIs, the test Kube API server knows about our CRD. So we install we mention the CRD path of our operator so that the Kube API server already know and install it before it runs the test. The next thing is always use like tear downs, because if you run too many tests parallelly, it's going to clog your system even if you are running a very low, very fast testing. So, and it also helps in running the test parallelly. Uh, Here also we should create our namespaces for each test. And each test suite must have a different namespace, because you should isolate your resources even if it's running in a test. Because it's if you're conflicting resources on the testing environment in the CI, it's going to fail. Also, as I mentioned, the term it's running parallelly, so you should wait for your test being run. So every test should be asynchronous. And what does eventually do? Suppose your kube API server is a little bit slow, and it takes time to create your secret. Your test shouldn't be fail. So it should wait a bit until to match the latency. So we always have some timeout before we can even decide if the test is failed or not. And also, as I said, it's not 100% replicable to the end-to-end test. I still write those tests on day-to-day basis, but if your operator is heavily including a lot of cloud APIs, you can use the mocks. And I especially love the Go mock because I'm using it for almost 3 years. But there are Counterfeit is the new one. It's way easier to create mocks for your cloud provider resources. And yeah. Here you can check the kubebuilder docs, and kubebuilder is it's a way to create operators, and you have all the instruction to go through for writing more good Envtest. And if you want to see how Envtests are powerful, you can go to Kube6 cluster API, and all these providers, they have created their whole test fleets using extensive env testing. And those cluster API providers are being used production for various different companies. And also Azure and AWS also supports the cluster API providers. So you can imagine how powerful it can be in the production. Yeah, that was all it. Let's have some Q&A session if anyone has some doubts. So yeah. Yeah.
One second. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, it's for the testing. So if you're writing your operator, you should have that a flow in your mind and write the test so that it can reflect with that situation. You change some secret, then you should change you can update the secret, and in the next eventually you can see that if the secret got changed or not. So that's how you can. Don't wait for your AWS secret manager to wait until it finishes. It can be done in 5 seconds. So yeah, this is how it will be. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. You had.
Yeah, okay. I was asking that you bring up an HCG component and you bring up a Kube API server, right? So is it an isolated environment? You create a cluster, it creates a cluster of its own, or is it a singular pod inside which it?
So the goal was to keep the testing environment very short and ready to serve in way lesser than end-to-end test. So that's why they only kept Kube API server to serve the CRDs and the HCD to manage the state of your custom resources. So these two things you only need. You don't need anything else in terms of testing this, because your operator is doing all the business logic. So what operator should do, and you are just reflecting those things, validating those things in the test. So you only register your CRD in the API server, and your operator change the CRD's like spec, and it get into the HCD, get persisted in the HCD, and you just do your testing that way. I hope that also answers. Any more questions? When you include the Envtest in your operator, it comes with it. It is a whole kind of package, Golang package that you can use. It's not that you have to do anything. You just import it. You just have the environment. So it creates the things on the fly. Yeah. As I said, it's like a framework. So there is like it obviously dependency. So controller runtimes. So like if you're using kubebuilder, they use controller runtime. So the Envtest is by controller runtime people. They wrote this Envtest framework. So if you use it, yeah, it has a dependency, but it won't be causing much issue because it's already integrated in the Golang import.